So here is the question. What is the connection between dairy and pronatalism? You might answer that dairy is a place where you're producing milk. In order for you to produce milk, you have to impregnate cows and breed calves, which is a pronatalistic idea, and that's the connection. But the underlying justification on which dairy is based, and there are many different justifications which people come up with, they generally mainly run around the idea of human supremacy, the idea that humans are superior to these animals in whatever arbitrary factors like intelligence, or you can walk on 2 feet, or you don't have tails, or whatever you can think of. But humans are superior, which grants you access or right to do what you want to do with these animals, and it includes things like meat, leather, and many other things, dairy being one of them. So the basis on which this justification sits is actually human supremacy, and pronatalism just happens to be an incidental fact in dairy. But I want to bring out another perspective where dairy is based on central idea of pronatalism. Motherhood is very central to pronatalism. Motherhood is an idea which is celebrated in pronatalist societies. Women are encouraged to be mothers. There are standards of what's a good mother and what's a bad mother. But the point is, motherhood is central to pronatalism. What if I tell you that cow is your mother? You might be surprised if you're hearing this for the first time, but in India, it is a mainstream idea. There are a lot of people who think that cow is their mother. They worship cow, and cow is thought of as sacred. So you might think that's a good thing. If cows are thought of as sacred, then they must be having a great time in India. That might be a good thing. But things are not that straightforward. Yamini Narayanan has done a lot of very good research, excellent research in this area. She has written a lot of research papers on this subject. She has also written recently a book called Mother Cow, Mother India on this subject. Let us see what she has to say on this subject.
So there is a particular form of objectification that takes place when you treat a living being as sacred. And when it is non-consensual, it is a violation. So what does it mean to treat a cow as sacred? And here as well, implicitly, we are treating a lactating cow as sacred. Okay? Because if you look at Hindu scriptures, they are profuse with ideas of Kamadhenu. Kamadhenu, a mythological sacred cow. Surabhi as well is a mythological sacred cow. And if you look at the theological visions, the theological versions of these sacred cows, they are rotated around the idea of an extremely effectively lactating, profusely lactating cow. Okay? So the sacralization is very much entwined with them being dairy cows, with them producing cows for dairy, right? So like Kamadhenu, like if you look at the scriptures, what the scriptures actually, how they describe Kamadhenu, the cow, I am going to actually read you some of the ways in which the scriptures describe the cow, yeah? The extent of the cow's veneration as a lactating mother, all right, is very clear in the scriptures from the way her udder itself is objectified. So I'm quoting here, start quotes, that the great cow with exhaustless udder pouring 1,000 streams give milk to feed us. And then again, I'm quoting here, the cow's udder within quotes is pure, it's heavenly. And I'm quoting here again, it swells with lordly nectar. The cow's milk is nutritious, brightly shining, all sustaining. So milk is a symbol of motherhood. The milk is sacred. Her sacrality is attached to the milk, which is also sacred. The cow's sacrality is not in a vacuum. The cow's sacrality is very much attached to the commodity that she produces, which is also sacred.
Right.
Right? So in this situation, we are worshipping the cow, the lactating cow who's producing this voluminous amount of milk for human progeny. When the cow is my mother, the implicit thing about claiming mothership or claiming a mothering relationship with the female being is right to her lactate. Okay, so right to her breast milk. So in this situation, the cow being a mother automatically grants the human right to her milk. It actually entrenches and deepens dairy farming.
Interesting.
It's the basis for entrenching and deepening dairy farming. It doesn't separate the cow from dairy farming. It actually makes the cow more vulnerable to dairy farming. Because the cow is firstly my mother, so I have a right to her milk, but the milk is sacred, and that makes the cow sacred. Or the cow is sacred, and therefore her milk is sacred. But these are so tightly intertwined that the cow's status as sacred entrenches the cow more deeply into dairy farming.
So that's the thing. Making cows sacred, thinking of her as your mother, does not help individual cows at all. In fact, it makes the matter even worse for them. Yamini has written extensively on cruelty in Indian dairy farming as a result of this sort of concepts. But the point is, she talks that cow is my mother, so I have a right to her milk. It also works the other way around, that because I drink cow's milk, because I consume dairy, she is my mother, and this goes in a feedback loop that I drink her milk, so she is my mother. She is my mother, so I have right to her milk. This feedback loop has placed cow centrally to Indian politics and Indian identity while also invisibilizing the suffering of individual cows.
You get to dairy farming itself. By its fundamental nature, dairy farming cannot be different in India to the West or anywhere else. Fundamentally, you have to separate the calf from the cow. You have to repeatedly impregnate the animal. Maternity is actually profuse with risks. Pregnancy is profuse with risks. These risks have been eliminated or at least largely reduced for humans. So we actually tend to forget the extent to which pregnancy can be profuse with risks. In fact, the leading cause of death in a dairy farm is maternal mortality. Maternal mortality is largely defined as the death of the mother within 24 hours of delivery, which happens all the time in a dairy farm. It is, in fact, the leading cause of death in a dairy farm, because obviously cows don't get the pregnancy care that is required to sustain a healthy pregnancy, and especially when you're being impregnated year after year after year, pregnancy complications, and the dairy farms don't have the resources to account for pregnancy complications. It is a maternity ward. The dairy farm is basically a maternity ward. That remains the case whether it is in India or not, whether you think of the cow as sacred or not.
This is a remarkable comment by her, at least for me, because I had never thought dairy as a maternity ward. But the fact is, there are similarities. In fact, it's quite the same. You have a human maternity ward where you have a bunch of women who have recently given birth to a child and who are lactating mothers. That's exactly the same thing in dairy. You have lactating mothers who have recently given birth to their child. So this similarity is startling to me. What is even more surprising is that people who think of cow as their mothers don't actually view dairy like this. They don't think dairy as a maternity ward. The other point is, if you are an antinatalist, you would think that maternity ward is a place which should not exist. And then you can see the connection here. Dairy is exactly what maternity ward is, which is central to pronatalism.
Oh, and especially the idea of the mother is perhaps the most dangerous relational idea of kinship, because the mother fundamentally has this sort of connotation. Even taking a step back from cow motherhood, the idea of motherhood is associated with ideas of self-sacrifice. Okay, it's associated with the idea of self-denial, because as a mother, you would do anything for your children. You project that to the cow will do anything for her children, which is probably very true as it was her calf, but we're projecting that idea onto us.
Right.
So this was in a Gaushana that I talk about this in my book. I talk about this in some of my papers as well, where I saw a cow once having a fit in a dairy farm. Like, she was literally having a fit. And I later asked the manager, I said, "What's wrong with the cow?" And he goes, "Oh, nothing to worry about." And she was actually rescued from the slaughterhouse, but she was taken back into the dairy farm to perform the labor of milking and pregnancy and lactation again. And he goes, "Oh yeah, we milk her and then she fits for half an hour and then it's fine." And I asked him, I said, "Why do you keep getting her pregnant then, if she's clearly not able to handle it?" And he said, "Oh, she can handle it. She's a mother. She can handle anything." So the idea of the mother is just used as an exploitative mechanism for what the idea of the motherhood can offer. What the idea of the motherhood can offer is commoditized, is capitalized, and it becomes a means of exploitation. And, we talk about not just the human mother, but the cow mother as well as a self-sacrificing mother. Right? But this is what I'm saying, is that this relationship is non-consensual.
And this is the cow she was talking about here, and she also refers to that in her book. What is actually happening is that people who think this way, that cow is their mother, actually think of cow as an abstract entity somewhere in the abstract space, like God. With this mechanism, they don't have to worry about what actually is happening to the individual bodies of individual cows in the process of dairying. As long as you're thinking that abstract cow as your mother, you can ignore all of this exploitation. You don't have to worry about what's happening to them. None of the guilt associated with all the cruelty and exploitation of those individual cows stick to you. you, and you can continue consuming dairy this way. If you have any basic biological knowledge, it would be easy for you to reject the idea that cow is in some way or form your mother. And if you're an antinatalist, it would be easy for you to see the connection between dairy and motherhood, which is the central idea of pronatalism. And then it will be easy for you to reject dairy as well through antinatalism.